Hi, and welcome to my podcast, Pregnant in Japan, your podcast about pregnancy, birth, and the joy of a relaxed motherhood in Japan. My name is Vicky. I'm a German mom living in Tokyo. I'm sharing my positive birth experience to inspire you with yours. Today we have Brett Iimura, who is the director of the Childbirth Education Center, and she helps couples in all kinds of matters regarding prenatal and postnatal care. Brett, welcome to the Pregnant in Japan podcast. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Brett, you are originally from the States, but you have a long history with Japan, right?
Exactly. I'm originally from New York, and I lived solidly in Japan for about 20 years. And the last 10 years, I've been mostly back in the States, in Massachusetts, and I am occasionally in Japan, usually around once a year or so, sometimes more, and recently, of course, a lot less.
Yes, of course, yes. And you have been in the CDC or Childbirth Education Center for 25 years, right?
Yes, it's actually moving up past 25 years this year. And yeah, it was started in Japan by myself and a partner who about 6 years after we started it, I think, she moved back to the States, and I've been running it ever since. It's where the longest independent childbirth education group, if you will, doing this.
Wow. So
in Japan. Yeah.
You have experience with a lot of couples from all over the world, I guess.
Yes, that's the exciting part for me.
Yes. Okay. Before we dive into the topic, I like to ask two unconventional questions. First of all, what's the last movie you saw?
I haven't seen a movie in years.
Ooh.
So I have no answer for that. I have not been to a movie theater in I don't even know how long.
Okay, so you are not into movies.
No, I am, or I used to be, but for some reason I just haven't gotten to a theater in a very long time. Oh, wait, I take that back, actually. I think it was definitely before COVID. There was a movie. It was a documentary. Went with a friend to a very small art kind of local cinema here. But I can't remember what it was.
Okay, it doesn't matter because I have a second question.
Okay.
Okay, do you prefer coffee or tea?
Depends what time of day.
Okay, so both morning coffee and evening tea?
Morning ocha. If I have pie or something, kocha or black tea. And coffee is also kind of my morning beverage, but after my ocha.
Ocha. So ocha is the Japanese.
The green tea, yes.
Right. So you got it shipped from Japan.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Brett, I want to briefly explain how I got to know you. A little bit over a year ago, I got to Japan, and I was already pregnant, and I was looking for a hospital, and I had such a hard time to find the right caregiver for me. It was just something, because I also had the time pressure in my back, because you read, and it's for some hospitals, it's true, you need to make a reservation pretty quickly, and then on the other hand, I found when I go to a hospital, they wouldn't allow me touring, and I would have to register every time and do a checkup, which of course it's kind of costly. Of course you get the coupons, but not for 5 first checkups, you know. So I have to say I was pretty low with my energy, and mentally not too good about the situation. Everything was new. And then I was seeking for help, and I found you. And we had a Zoom meeting or a Skype meeting, and I was so glad I found you, because it seemed like you know so much. Of course, we did the first time not introduction. You looked what kind of needs I have and what I was looking for, and then yeah, we went all through the hospitals, which was great.
That is one of the more popular consultations that I do, is the choosing a caregiver consultation,
Yeah.
because it can be very difficult to suss
So,
out what's available and what meets your particular needs.
yeah. And so is this one of the ways you can help most pregnant women here in Japan?
I think it's one of the most necessary things that we provide, that we offer, because it is very tricky to, first of all, some women don't even know yet really what they're looking for. So that's one level of help, is trying to help them, not maneuver really, but clarify what they may be looking for in their upcoming birth. But then trying to navigate the system in Japan is very difficult, even for Japanese speakers, but especially for non-Japanese speakers, who are unfamiliar with the system. And so explaining how the system works and how the variety of choices that are available, and then honing in on which of those choices may meet any particular woman's needs the best.
Yeah. Why you mentioned it can be also difficult for Japanese people. Now I'm a bit surprised.
Yeah, it can be. Some people will just go with what they've heard, or what's convenient, what's in the neighborhood. But others are looking for something more specific, and it can even be tricky for them to navigate. Sometimes to even find what they're looking for. Although now it's easier to find at least the choices because of the internet. When I started, there was no such thing. So I am a dinosaur. And we had other ways of trying to, find information and disperse information. The internet has been a blessing because you have tons and tons of information, but it's kind of a curse as well, because you have to be able to determine what is accurate information and what isn't. What is one person's personal experience and their viewpoint versus what may actually be a different kind of setting. The actual things that are going on in that particular setting may actually be a little different than what that person perceived because of their personal expectations. So trying to discern, I think, what is the most accurate information on the internet can still be very difficult, even though there is more information available. Plus, a lot of facilities simply don't give out a lot of information on their sites. So you have to be able to read between the lines, which after 25 years, I'm pretty decent at.
Yes. I actually remember you gave me such a hint because I didn't really end up, but part of my way was the Kinoshita Hospital, and I remember you said, they are pointing out this and this, but I think it really means this and this, and I would never guess that's what they mean, Might be partly also because of my German culture, we say what we mean what we say. Yeah. Wow. So, what do you think? What are some major criteria when searching for a hospital for foreigners?
One of the major criterion would be, what are the intervention rates? And that information is notoriously difficult to come by.
The intervention?
The medical intervention rates. So, for example, what percentage of women who give birth via cesarean? What percentage have an episiotomy? What percentage use an epidural if an epidural is available there? Those kinds of things. What percentage of women are induced or have augmentation? These kinds of things. Those intervention rates are vital pieces of information because they give you your probability, in a sense, of those interventions being applied to you or not. So that's extremely important information and extremely difficult to come by.
Yeah, but because the hospital probably wouldn't put it on the webpage or some parts of it.
There actually are a few that do put some of that information on their own webpage. Very few do. What you have to have, first of all, a kind of long history of experience and seeing how their intervention rates in general have evolved over time, and then you can kind of more or less have an educated guess as to what it is at any particular time. You also have to have a network that you can go and ask these questions of, a network of midwives and doctors and other people that you can talk to and ask this information if you really need very specific information or to get a better feel for something. And that's something that I've made my mission to create and connect with and continue and plug into all these years.
Yeah. Oh, so you gathered quite a few information over all these years, also with your network, with the midwives or doctors and so on.
You have to. You really have to, because it's hard to just come up with it, out of the blue.
So
that's not the only criterion, though. I mean, that's one of the most important ones, though.
The interventions, right?
Yeah. And another is the woman comfortable there? Does she get a good feel? Does she get a good vibe? If she's not comfortable, if she doesn't feel comfortable and safe, then that's going to impact her birth negatively. So she is the ultimate determinant about as to whether or not she chooses a place, whether or not the place feels right to her. They could have the best intervention rates in the world, but if she has a bad feeling there, that's not a good place for her. So that's a really important thing to consider as well and to keep in mind.
Totally agree. I have been to IECO and to the Red Cross, which are, I think, good hospitals or very good hospitals even, and it just didn't feel like the right place for me, and that's why I continued. So yeah, I totally agree. You have to feel so comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you took that energy and effort to continue, because if you don't feel comfortable, if you have that niggling feeling in the back of your mind that this looks great, but it just doesn't feel right, then it's important to follow that feeling and to look at more choices. Which it's tricky to do because, as you said, you can't just go for a consultation most of the time in Japan. Some of the midwifery clinics allow just a consultation, just to come in for a tour or a talk. Most hospitals do not. So it's a little tricky to actually implement that, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Gladly there are people like you who can help. But there was touring possible before in some hospital, and it's not now anymore. I mean, besides of COVID, I know it won't be possible, but did it used to be possible more than it is now? The touring of hospitals?
Some hospitals have had a tour in place for many, many years. Some of them restrict it to patients who are already registered as patients. When I was doing the IECU tour, technically that may have been the case, but everyone came through me to get into the tour, so I didn't care if you were registered as a patient there or not. I wasn't working for the hospital, and I feel it's very important for couples to be able to have a tour and a view of what's going on inside, so they can feel, does this feel right or doesn't it feel right? And you can use your five senses if you're right there.
Correct,
so
yes.
There were some hospitals that were doing that either for only just for registered patients or for anybody. They would have like a monthly tour or something like that, which anyone could have joined. Of course, with COVID, all of that stopped.
Oh, so it stopped because of COVID?
It's not like everyone was doing it before, but those that were doing it had to stop because of COVID. And, some switched to a virtual format, which is, better than not having anything. Yeah. But particularly for myself, I feel through my five senses, and I can't even explain it, but you just feel it through your skin, through your eyes, through your ears.
Yes, definitely.
So being there is very important.
So what can you recommend a pregnant woman if if there's no touring available, what should we do in this kind of situation?
Certainly get the stories of other women, but it should be a wide variety of women, or as many women as you can, because everyone, again, is going to have their own personal expectations, and whether those expectations were met or not is going to determine and color how they view that particular facility. So you can only take those as personal stories, but if you have many from one place, then you might get a better picture, a better feel for what the facility might be like. If they do offer a virtual tour, absolutely take the virtual tour. That's certainly something you can do now. And if you go for a visit, like a prenatal visit, keep your feelers open and out and searching. The outpatient area can be very different than the inpatient birthing area, so you won't necessarily get a feel for that, but you'll get a feel for how the hospital kind of moves, and how the people working there interact. And that's a fairly good indication of what it might be like, upstairs on the floor, on the ward.
So I guess you can just go in the hospital and try to...
Just going in, unless it's just a maternity hospital, and you're not going to see much, because you're only going to be in the lobby. You really have to, unfortunately, make an appointment. And I hope this is okay on your podcast or on this interview, but personally, I find it rather disappointing that a woman has to open her legs in order to be heard and seen.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you have to have a prenatal appointment in so many places to even get in the door is unfortunate. And it's not the case everywhere. Certainly, if you're going to a smaller one doctor run hospital or clinic, then you may or may not have to do that, although in some places you still have to make a prenatal appointment. So I think it's not the best way. In the States, for example, and in some other places, you can book a consultation. You may be charged for a consultation, but you can book a consultation where you don't actually have to have a physical exam. It's just basically you're interviewing the doctor, or interviewing the hospital, if you will. But that's almost unheard of in Japan, except in midwifery clinics, where they usually do have open talk sessions, open question and answer sessions, tours, etc.
Yeah, very important. I know at the Kinoshita Hospital, they did the consultation even for free, and it was just a very nice midwife and my husband and me, and she answered. She took really all the time to answer a whole bunch of questions, so that was very nice. And the other place where there was a consultation, I was at the Matsugaoka Birth Center. I think it costs like 5,000 yen for an hour, but it's worth it,
Yeah, there are. Well, that's a midwifery clinic, so that I would expect more of that kind of service. But the other one you mentioned, the clinic you mentioned, it's rare, but it's great when it's there, when you can just go in for a consultation.
Yeah. Do you know of any other places that offer this service? It's probably difficult now.
It's not offhand. There are certain singular doctor-run facilities that are amenable to that. They may not openly promote that they do that, but if you ask, they will do that. But it's kind of catch as catch can.
Okay, so you have to ask. That's a good advice, I think.
Always ask. Never be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
And the more women who ask, the more possibility that is of creating change, because facilities may see a need to change if everyone's asking for it.
Yeah. See, I think maybe some women, if they don't see that it's, if they see it's not offered by a hospital, they wouldn't ask. But yeah, you always have to ask. You're very right. And you will find open doors.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, coming back to your consultation, Brett, what is a good time to contact you if we want to seek your advice?
It depends what you're seeking it for, but some women have come before they're pregnant. They want to get the lay of the land. And actually, we're offering a new course on the microbiome of the infant and the newborn and how birth practices can impact that. So some that might be taken before you're pregnant or in early pregnancy, so that you can you start thinking in that direction, and that may actually inform your choices of where you decide you want to give birth and what kind of birth you decide you want. And then of course we have the complete full birth preparation class, which I generally recommend taking sometime in the latter half of the second trimester or the very beginning of the third trimester, because if you decide you want to make a change, then there's still more time, there's more leeway in terms of making a change. And of course, breastfeeding we will cover, and there are pop-up classes which are just like one topic. I find that more women are interested in just kind of like an hour on one topic, but personally I find that only gives you such a narrow point of view, and it doesn't give you the whole picture, and you don't see necessarily how it connects to everything else and all the other choices that you will be required to make. So personally, I think a full birth class gives a more well-rounded picture and gives you all the information that you will need all the different pieces of the puzzle that you'll need to get the big picture. But it is certainly possible to do a consultation on a single topic. And then of course postpartum, I think it's very important for a lot of women to be able to digest their experience. What was that? what did I just go through, and how is that impacting me now as a mother? And also baby care, of course. Baby care is another issue in breastfeeding and postpartum recovery, and your whole new life. Before and after baby, as you know, it's two completely different worlds, and some women need more of an adjustment period. And even if you don't think you need an adjustment period, everybody needs an adjustment period to one degree or another. And I think digesting the birth experience and relating it to what you're going through at that time postpartum and early mothering, it can be really, really helpful to just have a consultation, just to talk through some of the issues. Because I can often give feedback on, if you tell me what your experience was, what actually may have been going on medically, perhaps, to clarify certain points, but more importantly, to have someone to listen and to help guide and give pointers on how to make a smooth transition in those first few weeks.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about my postpartum experience, and I definitely needed somebody to talk to, and of course it's nice to talk if you have time with a baby with the husband or friends, but I also would recommend to talk to somebody who has some experience, who can tell you, okay, I think this now is normal, or this is maybe too heavy on you. You can seek for more advice here or there. And
there have been times when I have gone actually to in-person postpartum visits, which I can't usually now, but where I've noticed a certain picture that's going on and said, you need to see the doctor. And when they saw the doctor, they needed actually more surgery to correct some things. So you can tell that, not just because I'm not doing any physical exam, I'm not a medical practitioner, but if you see certain things going on with breastfeeding, for example, or newborn behavior, or even what's going on with the mother herself, you can get a picture of, well, maybe this help may be necessary here, and this is a resource to go to. I just think it's really important. Remember, we didn't used to live in these nuclear families, in terms of human history. We lived in communal groups. You didn't have to go through all this by yourself. Yes. Or with just a partner. And first of all, men and women react very differently. So that, women often like to vent and repeat and work through things that way. And men usually, this is very stereotypical what I'm saying right now, but often what I see is men want to find a solution. They see a problem and they want a solution, and done.
So
and
true.
That's not necessarily what women need. Which is why, as you mentioned, talking to women friends can also be very helpful, but sometimes you need something a little more than that. And since we don't live in communal groups anymore, where we share baby care, where the baby's passed around, so it's not just the mother holding the baby all the time. It may not even be just the mother breastfeeding the baby all the time. So we don't have that anymore. We don't necessarily have that support anymore. So this is kind of a new age way of getting that kind of support.
Yeah. And I actually feel, especially being pregnant in another country and raising a little baby in another country without parents or family, like you said, a whole community of people, or maybe friendship haven't developed yet, like deep friendship like you have in your hometown. It's especially hard on new moms, I think.
Absolutely. You kind of need to start creating and envisioning your support network, either before you're pregnant or certainly during pregnancy. But as a foreign person in a different country, in a completely different system, and often in a completely different language, it's a different culture, just everything may be very different. It is really important to start that support network. I also think that being a foreigner in a new country, giving birth in a completely different environment is an opportunity. It's really an opportunity for women to think about birth. Because if you're in your own country, you may just kind of go with the flow, whatever is the most common thing, and you may not have any specific ideas, or may not have even thought very deeply about it. It's like, oh, this is what's done, so that's what I'll do. Being in a foreign country is a real opportunity to really delve into, well, what is birth? What does it mean to me? How do I want to birth? And then navigating the system, of course, of where you are. But I think it actually creates an opportunity.
That's so funny, Brett, because I feel like you're speaking about me. Because that's what happened to me. And you're right. When I would stay in Germany, I would probably go with the flow and do like everybody else. And being here in Japan, everything was totally different. And then it made me started to think, how can it actually look like, and how can it look like for me? And I felt like I really want to be prepared, because I don't know what's going to happen here, and I don't speak Japanese. So yeah, you are totally right. I've never seen it that clear as an opportunity, but yeah, thank you for naming it. Yeah, wonderful. I would like to go back to the hospitals. We talked about hospitals, some hospitals here in Tokyo. Is it also possible for you to consult couples who are in Greater Tokyo or somewhere else in Japan? Do you have some experience? Oh, so, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, I've had consults from all over Japan, and actually some who have gone to their home countries. But I've always done that. It used to be by telephone. But I've always had that ability to do that. No one was shut out because I was in Tokyo and they weren't. To have the in-person birth classes at that time, yeah, you had to come to Tokyo. If you weren't in Tokyo, you had to come to Tokyo. And I did have people coming from not all over Japan, so not from Hokkaido or from, down south in Kyushu, but somewhere in Honshu, there were people who came from farther away than I would have expected. But that was not, that was not the norm. Most people were in and or around the Tokyo area. And now the past 10 years, so it had nothing to do with COVID, but the past 10 years, I've also done things online as well as in person. So yeah, I hesitated. I must admit, 10 years ago, I hesitated, like, can I really do what I do online? Can I give the same kind of care and support? And I quickly found, I had to change the angle I would show things in so that you can see it in this format. But the only thing I couldn't do was touch people and, show them exactly where to massage or how to massage or, how to move their bodies. But everything else, we could be very interactive even through this medium. And I have people get up and do different exercises and try out things. We may adjust the monitors or something, but you can do basically everything, just about everything except touch somebody. So I've been kind of used to this medium for the past 10 years. So it was actually kind of surprising to see everybody kind of up in arms. It's like, oh my God, how can we have to cancel all our classes. We can't possibly do this anymore. It's like, no, not really. It's pretty easy. Just shift.
Yeah. Okay. So people can from all over, I guess from all over the world actually now, not just Japan, right?
Absolutely. I've had people, dial in, if you will, from different countries, either because they're coming to Japan for the birth or because they were in Japan and they were planning to take a class and then they went back to their home country. So I've had people from different, in their home countries calling in and, joining the class virtually as well. It's not the norm, but certainly couples from all over Japan are in the virtual world.
Great. I have to admit, I didn't, because I worked before in the intercultural field. We did trainings for foreigners about German culture. And then sometimes we had some sessions on Zoom or Team. I don't remember exactly which tool we use, or different tools. Skype. And I had a hard time, doing this online at the beginning. And you don't have to move a lot and you can connect to so many people all over the world.
That's, if there's a silver lining, that might be it.
Yes. And the virtual, so there are virtual meetings you can organize, a consultation, right?
Consultations,
yes.
Classes.
Yes.
Consultations and classes. And the consultations are usually private. The classes can be private, but they can also be group classes.
Now I have a question for you when it's virtual and you're in the US. Because when we came to Japan, my little brother, who was 20 years younger than me, he was that time in Canada doing an exchange, and we had always challenges to call each other because of the time difference. How do you manage it?
Well, I mean, it's just the opposite. So, mornings in Japan are perfectly doable for me, and evenings can be a little trickier, but most people, evenings are trickier.
Your evenings? Japan evenings?
No, your evenings.
In Japan, sorry.
Yeah, Japan evenings, because that becomes like the wee hours of my morning. But generally speaking, all of the morning hours in Japan are perfectly doable. And since I offer spots on weekends as well as weekdays, it hasn't really been an issue. That's been a fine time. And when I'm in person, I would always start in the morning. We would have usually a full day class, which I would never do a full day class online. I just think that's way too much sitting in front of no matter how many times you're up and down, I think that's just way too much sitting in front of a screen. So we do break it up. So whereas I used to do a 2-day class, either not all in one weekend, I did those, but I personally preferred and thought it was more beneficial to have one day on one weekend and the second day on a different weekend. I thought it gave time to absorb some of the information and then come up with more questions and move on from there. But in the virtual world, I split it usually into 3 sessions of about 3 hours each, for the full, to have the full birth class, because I think that works better in terms of timing. It's hard to sit there for that long through a screen.
Yeah, that's a good thing to split it up. Great. I feel like we got already so many valuable informations from you. Thank you. Before we come slowly to an end, I got a few other questions. For example, I was very surprised in a positive way when I told you that I'm a little bit, while I was pregnant, I'm a little bit concerned that there is no midwife service here in Japan, like in Germany. And you said, oh yeah, I know, you guys do that in Germany, because we have like in France too, and probably in other countries too, a free service of midwives who come regularly to your house after your baby is born. And what is like, so obviously it doesn't exist here. What is something that new moms could do instead, or where could they?
What's interesting is if you have a home birth in Japan, then the midwife does come to your house
afterwards
for the next 5 days. Yes. Okay. But that's the only time. Well, I shouldn't say the only time, but that's generally speaking the only time. There are other variations if you, for example, give birth at a midwifery clinic, or even at even at a hospital, and then to go home, but you've been under the care of an independent midwife, then they may come and to your home, or you may go and stay at the midwifery clinic after you've given birth in the hospital for whatever reason you needed to do that. So it's not systemic. It's not like it is in Germany or the UK, where you have these expected postpartum visits from a midwife. And so you need to, for the flip side of that is, if you give birth in a facility in Japan, you're going to be in that facility for anywhere from 4 to 7 days for a vaginal birth and 6 to 10 days for a cesarean. It depends, it's slowly getting shorter by a day or two, but that would be the range still at this point. So you're actually in hospital for a longer period of time. So those home visits usually come, now it depends on the country. Some of them come spread out, more spread out over the next few weeks. But those like the first 5-day home visit type of thing, you wouldn't need it because you're in the facility.
Okay.
And Japan does offer through the public health system. I can't remember what it is right now, if it's 1 or 2 visits that that every woman is actually entitled to a home visit from, and it may be a midwife, it may be a public health nurse. There's no guarantee of who that would be. It depends who's working in that particular ward.
For me it was 1. Yeah. Are there any other like cultural differences from women from other countries that like really maybe shocked you or surprised you, where you said, "But that's really different from what it is in Japan or what it is from the States"? Or of course there are. The beauty of this for me is I learned so much from the couples in my classes. I learn about birth in general, women's views in general, but also sometimes some very specific cultural views or practices. And I'm kind of blanking on, because there are just so many over the years, but it's almost constant that I'm learning that. Most surprising or shocking. Actually, I didn't learn this from people in my class. I learned this because I lived in the Soviet Union for a few months. It was only a few months, but a friend of mine, his wife, had a baby while I was there, and we went to visit the hospital, and it was, to me, hilarious. It's quite normal. It may be changing somewhat, but it was quite normal at the time. The men kind of line up outside of the facility, call up to their wives, and the wives may come to the window, maybe show the baby if
they have the baby with them. Most of them don't at that time. And then they kind of like shout back and forth to each other because the men weren't actually allowed to go into the hospital. So I found that pretty interesting. But that wasn't from someone in my class. I just remember that, when you asked that question.
Well, I hope that changed meanwhile.
What was funny to me was,
something.
This particular friend's name, the wife's name was Olga, and a nickname for Olga is often Olya, and it's very common. So a lot of men were calling up Olya, Olya, and lots of different women come to the windows because there were so many Olya.
That's a good story. Oh, wonderful. Another thing I would like to ask you, can you, I don't know if it's a good question to ask, but I think it's kind of important, for the consultation, what are the prices more or less for the consultation you do? Can you just name a few, because you have several?
Our flagship course is the Birthing Your Baby class, and that's currently set at $400. I didn't want to make it as high, for example, as some of the specialty courses like hypnobirthing, which I've seen go for $700 or more. And of course, it has changed over the years, and we are offering a discount for COVID, or we have been, and still do for people who feel that they need that. Then, of course, there are individual classes, an hour or two, usually an hour or so, on single topics, which can act as a kind of supplement to the main class, not necessarily necessary for everybody, but for those who want to delve into a little bit more detail. And then, of course, our newest one, which is the newborn infant microbiome. And that's a kind of introductory class for just about an hour. And that we're offering at $100. And what am I forgetting here? Postpartum digestion is what I call it. And those are private consultations that I mentioned before. And we usually meet for an hour or two. It depends again on the person's needs. And that generally goes for $200. It really depends on each individual. So there's a variety to choose from. Most people do take the Birthing Your Baby class, and you'll notice that it's called Birthing Your Baby. It's not somebody delivering your baby, but you are birthing your baby. And the Choosing a Caregiver class. Those are two of the classes that are the most popular. And we hope that the microbiome class becomes a popular one as well, which, again, we're offering either prenatally or mostly in the first trimester, because that can determine what you learn in that class, may determine some of the choices you decide on later for the birth and for child rearing. So those are some of the things that we offer.
Okay, thank you. Definitely worth the investment.
I think so. I mean, obviously I think so. Otherwise I wouldn't be offering it. But I remember going through my first pregnancy in Japan, and I spoke Japanese. And again, there was no internet, so it was harder to find information, but it was really hard. It was really hard. And I realized how much harder it was for couples who didn't speak Japanese. And that was kind of the impetus for starting CEC. It's like, this information needs to get out to a wider audience. Women were going to basically one of 3 hospitals at the time, and that's all they knew. And it was hard to find information because, one person tells the next person, but you're all using the same, basically 3 hospitals. So, and even for myself, I didn't know there were certain choices even available in Japan when I started looking. I was hoping, but I had assumed that those choices weren't even available. And to find out that they were was usually shocking. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even know how to find out.
Yeah, that's
So trying to make that easier has been a mission, but also birth is just the most amazing thing on earth. I'm sorry. It hands down, it's the most amazing thing on earth. And to help couples through that, and make it, have them, especially for people who come to it with a more fear than pleasure, or excitement, then to help them come to it and look at it more from the excitement point of view, and as an amazing adventure. And here's what you can do, and here's how it can become a more pleasurable and memory. Because there is research that shows that the birth experience for women sticks with them their entire lives. They will remember certain things. They may not remember every detail, but what they will remember is whether someone treated them well and kindly, or whether someone treated them unkindly. And that sticks with people. It's so important. It becomes part of the very fabric of your physique, even, not just your mentality, and your emotional life. So it's really important to help women find people who they feel really comfortable with, and that ups the probability that they will have a more pleasurable memory, no matter what the birth itself was like. But it's that environment of invitation and what's the word I'm looking for? Collaboration. So that the woman doesn't feel done to, but she feels she's doing it.
Yeah, part of it. Because
Yeah, that she's a full participant,
yes.
Not just, oh, well, we'll give you, we're going to do this, and no question, no choice given, for example. That's an extreme. But even some of the pressure that's put on women to do certain things or not do certain things, you really want them to have some tools to be assertive and in advocating for themselves.
Thank you, Brett. It's so
My
wise.
pleasure.
Wow, I love it. And yeah, you are just so right about advocating for yourself and feeling comfortable. I totally agree. And also to take some time, invest time or also money, because like you said, it's a life experience and it sticks with you and with your baby too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, again, in my opinion, the most important life experience,
Yeah.
for both, as you say, for both you and your baby and your
And
partner and your family.
Yeah. Brett, one last question. If you could give, what advice would you give a pregnant woman in Japan, a newly pregnant woman in Japan? Or one advice. I know you have many.
It's so hard to come up with one pithy piece of advice.
One additional. You already gave a lot of advice.
Be open-minded, be flexible. Understand that if you're foreign, then it's not going to be necessarily as you expect. So come with your expectations, but be flexible, be open to other possibilities that you may not have even thought of, that may end up being better possibilities. I think that's really important. As I said before, take this as an opportunity to really delve into birth and feel what you really want, what you think might be best for your baby and for yourself, and then advocate for that. And you may or may not get everything you imagine, and that's fine. You may not have gotten everything you imagined in your home country either. Birth can also throw curveballs. So flexibility is also key. And get support, really get support.
Wonderful final words. I could not put it in a better way. Thank you a lot, Brett, for your time, for your insight, for your wise words. I really appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
my pleasure. I could go on and on and on and on and on.
And I actually could go on and on listening to you.
Yeah, it's hard to get me to shut up about this, but I'm trying to be very respectful of your time and your questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you.
Yeah.